You ever wonder what mornings used to feel like before smartphones, microwave burritos, and drive-through coffee? When the clink of silverware and the scent of cinnamon meant the day was about to begin. Back in the 1950s, breakfast wasn't just a meal, it was a ritual. It brought families to the same table, sleepy-eyed and still in pajamas, sharing quiet moments before the chaos of the day. No flashy trends. No protein bars. Just honest, heartwarming food made with care and sometimes a touch of sugar or a dollop of jam. But here's the twist, most of these morning treasures have vanished. Deviled eggs for breakfast? Toasted popovers slathered with homemade jam? Even something as simple as cottage cheese with pineapple, yes, it was a thing. These aren't just recipes, they're time machines, each one unlocking a flavor that shaped an entire generation. Today, I'm taking you back to the days when breakfast meant blueberry muffins straight from the oven, cinnamon sugar toast that melted on your tongue, and banana peanut butter sandwiches that stuck to the roof of your mouth in the best way possible. This is not your average breakfast list. This is a bite-by-bite journey through 15 forgotten breakfast classics from the golden age of American home cooking. So grab your apron, pour yourself a hot cup of nostalgia, and let's rediscover what we lost, one recipe at a time. Long before eggs became a symbol of brunch cafes and overpriced avocado toast, they were a morning mainstay in humble American homes. But not just scrambled or fried. In the 1950s, one elegant and surprisingly common breakfast dish was the deviled eggs breakfast spread, a protein-packed, flavorful start to the day that's nearly vanished from modern kitchens. Back then, deviled eggs weren't reserved for church picnics or potlucks. They appeared at breakfast tables, carefully halved and filled with whipped yolks blended with tangy mustard, a touch of mayo, and sometimes a pinch of paprika or sweet relish. Housewives would prep them the night before, refrigerate them, and set them out on chilled platters in the morning, ready to go alongside buttered toast, slices of country ham, or even crisp bacon. This wasn't just about taste, it was about presentation. A good deviled egg was meant to look elegant. Some home cooks even piped the filling in with a star-tipped bag. Others garnished with finely chopped chives, a dusting of smoked paprika, or a small sprig of dill. It turned an ordinary morning into something extraordinary. And let's not forget the variety. Some 1950s cookbooks suggested adding anchovy paste or horseradish for a savory punch. Others called for minced pickles, a splash of vinegar, or even curry powder, proof that even in the simpler times, American kitchens were boldly experimenting. But somewhere between the rise of boxed cereal and fast food breakfasts, deviled eggs lost their place at the morning table. It's time to bring them back, not just as a party snack, but as a beautiful, satisfying breakfast centerpiece. Serve them with fresh fruit, a toasted English muffin, and hot coffee, and you'll wonder why we ever let them go. This dish didn't just feed a family. It made breakfast feel like a celebration. There was a time when breakfast didn't try to impress you, it simply nourished you. And in the 1950s, that often meant something cool, clean, and curiously refreshing: cottage cheese and pineapple cups. Now it might sound odd to modern ears, especially in a world obsessed with protein powders and smoothie bowls. But in vintage American homes, this simple combo was seen as the perfect morning balance. High in protein, naturally sweet, and light on the stomach, it was a go-to for homemakers who wanted to serve something quick yet elegant. And yes, it was often served in actual glass dessert cups or fancy little bowls, chilled to perfection. Picture this: a scoop of fluffy, cold cottage cheese nestled in the center of a pineapple ring, maybe two. Sometimes the fruit was fresh, other times it came from a can with that syrupy golden glow. Either way, it gave just the right bite of tropical sweetness. Sprinkle a little nutmeg on top, maybe a maraschino cherry if you were feeling fancy, and breakfast suddenly looked like a page from Good Housekeeping. This dish was especially popular among women who were balancing figure-friendly meals with flavor. Cottage cheese was marketed as a modern miracle food rich in calcium, light on fat. Paired with pineapple, it became an emblem of clean, health-conscious eating long before diet culture had a name. But here's what people forget: it wasn't just healthy, it was comforting. The creamy and tangy bite of cottage cheese with the bright, juicy sweetness of pineapple created a contrast that lingered on the palate and made mornings feel just a little more graceful. Today, we pass it over. But maybe we shouldn't. Maybe it's time to revive this cool, classy cup of nourishment. Because sometimes, breakfast doesn't need syrup or sizzle. Sometimes, it just needs a spoon and a little sunshine in a bowl. Before yogurt parfaits and acai bowls took over breakfast menus, there was something delightfully simple gracing 1950s tables: fruit cocktail salad. It came in a can, yes. But don't be fooled by its humble packaging. That tiny tin packed a kind of magic: diced peaches, pears, grapes, pineapple, and one or two glowing red maraschino cherries. Just enough sweetness to say good morning without overwhelming you. And back then, opening that can was almost ceremonial. In post-war America, fruit cocktail wasn't just convenient, it was considered a luxury. Imported fruits, preserved at their peak, gave everyday families a taste of something exotic. And for breakfast, it became a canvas. Housewives would drain the syrup, chill the fruit overnight, and serve it in delicate glass dishes topped with a spoonful of whipped cream, or a dollop of mayonnaise for those who liked that sweet savory bite. Yes, mayonnaise. It might sound strange now, but it was common, especially in the South. Some even mixed in cottage cheese or a sprinkle of shredded coconut, transforming a basic can into something personalized and pretty. It wasn't flashy, but it felt special. A treat that bridged the line between healthy and indulgent. This salad often appeared on weekday mornings, church brunches, and even in kids' school thermoses. It was soft, sweet, and easy to love. Even picky eaters didn't protest. And here's the quiet truth: it filled a plate with color when not much else could. During seasons when fresh fruit was scarce or expensive, this little cocktail brought brightness to cold winter tables and busy school mornings. But somewhere along the way, we dismissed it. Too simple. Too old-fashioned. But maybe that's exactly what we need. Because sometimes, the forgotten breakfasts, the ones made in 5 minutes with nothing but heart, leave the sweetest memories behind. So dust off your glass bowls. Chill a can. And let the morning feel just a bit more golden again. Before Pop-Tarts and toaster strudels promised flavor in a foil pouch, mornings used to begin with something far more comforting. Cinnamon sugar toast. It was the kind of breakfast that didn't need a recipe, just memory. A warm slice of white bread, toasted golden, then slathered with butter while it was still hot enough to melt it into every corner. Then came the magic: a generous sprinkle of cinnamon mixed with white sugar, shaken on from a little glass jar kept near the stove. The sugar sparkled, the cinnamon danced, and the kitchen smelled like a warm hug. In 1950s households, this toast was a staple. Especially for kids. It was easy to make, even easier to love, and it didn't cost much, a blessing during leaner times. Sometimes moms made a whole tray in the oven, the broiler crisping the top into a sweet, caramelized crunch. Other times, it was handed to you on a paper napkin while your shoes were being tied and the bus was already pulling up. And let's not forget, this wasn't just breakfast. It was comfort food. If you were sick, sad, or just needed a little quiet moment, cinnamon sugar toast was the answer. A soft bite. A sweet note. A moment to pause. Some added little touches: a pinch of nutmeg, brown sugar instead of white, or wheat toast for a nuttier taste. But the soul of the dish remained the same: simple, sweet, and made with love. Today, we overlook it: too plain, too old school. But maybe that's what makes it so perfect. No fancy trends. No special ingredients. Just bread, butter, sugar, and time. So next time the morning feels rushed or heavy, reach for the cinnamon. Toast a slice. And remember the quiet joy of a breakfast that asked for nothing except to be shared. Before breakfast became a science of macros, smoothies, and superfoods. It was just this: toast with butter and jam. Simple? Yes. Forgettable? Never. In the 1950s, this wasn't a light option, it was the standard. Thick slices of white bread, maybe homemade or fresh from the corner bakery, popped into a chrome toaster that hissed and hummed before it gave up a slice with just the right edge of golden brown. No buttons, no digital timers. Just instinct and the familiar smell of bread crisping in the morning air. Once it popped, you had to work fast. The butter, real, salted, straight from the fridge, had to go on while the toast was still steaming. It melted instantly, soaking into the corners, pooling at the crust. Then came the jam. Maybe grape. Maybe strawberry. Maybe whatever was on sale or put up last summer in mason jars, labeled in faded handwriting. And when that spoonful of jam hit the buttered toast, something happened. It wasn't just breakfast. It was comfort. It was tradition. It was mom standing barefoot in a robe, or grandma at the kitchen table, humming an old hymn and stirring tea. Some households had a favorite jam: blackberry, rhubarb, peach preserves made from backyard trees. Others just used whatever was left from last week. But every version had the same goal: to start the day with something warm, sweet, and familiar. It was the taste of quiet mornings, radios whispering in the background, and sunlight pouring through cotton curtains. It was a breakfast you could hold in one hand and carry out the door. A breakfast that didn't try to impress, it just showed up, every day, with its gentle promise of your home. We've complicated breakfast. But maybe, just maybe, all we really need is a slice of toast, a little butter, and a spoonful of jam, to remember who we were, and how mornings used to feel. Long before croissants became the darling of breakfast menus, American kitchens had their own airy treasure, popovers. And when served warm with a spoonful of jam, it was nothing short of breakfast magic. Popovers were a special kind of miracle. Made from the simplest ingredients: flour, eggs, milk, and salt, they puffed up in the oven like little golden balloons, hollow inside, crisp outside. There was no yeast, no rising time. Just a hot pan, a hot oven, and faith. Every home cook knew, you don't open that oven door early or your popovers fall flat. In 1950s households, popovers were more than just a side, they were the centerpiece of a proper breakfast or weekend brunch. They were baked in deep tins, their tall, irregular shapes like edible sculptures. The thrill came when the oven opened, and the family saw how high they'd risen. It was a small joy, but one that mattered. The classic way to enjoy them? Crack one open while it's still steaming, slather the inside with real butter, and add a generous spoonful of homemade jam: apricot, raspberry, or plum if you were lucky. The jam would melt into the warm center, filling that hollow pocket with sweetness. They didn't just taste good, they felt special. Light, tender, and slightly eggy, popovers were what you served when guests stayed over, or when you wanted to make a Sunday morning unforgettable. Yet somewhere along the way, we stopped baking them. Maybe it was the fear of them falling flat. Or maybe we just forgot how magical simplicity could be. But popovers deserve a comeback. They're easy, impressive, and endlessly nostalgic. So next time you're craving something warm and soul-soothing, don't reach for a store-bought pastry. Bake a tray of popovers. Watch them rise. Break one open. And taste a morning the way it used to be, full of wonder, warmth, and a spoonful of jam. Before store-bought pastries lined the freezer aisle, and before apple cinnamon became just another flavor of breakfast bar, there was something far more honest. Baked cinnamon apple halves. This wasn't a dessert. This was breakfast. And in many 1950s homes, especially during the fall and winter months, it was a beloved morning ritual. A way to bring warmth to the kitchen without spending a dime on anything fancy. It began with apples, usually whatever variety was in the fruit bowl. Sliced in half, cored gently, and set cut side up in a glass baking dish. Into the hollowed centers went a pat of butter, a dusting of cinnamon, and a spoonful of brown sugar. Sometimes a handful of raisins joined the mix, sometimes oats or chopped walnuts. But the base was always the same: apple, spice, and love. Then came the slow bake. Not rushed. Not microwaved. Just low and steady until the apples softened, the butter melted into a sticky glaze, and the cinnamon perfumed the entire house. You didn't need a clock to tell when they were ready. The scent would wrap around every corner of the home like a warm wool blanket. These baked apples were often served in shallow bowls, with milk poured over them for children, or a dollop of cream for the grown-ups. Some even spooned them onto hot cereal or toast. Others simply enjoyed them as is, their soft centers practically melting into the spoon. It was economical. It was nourishing. And most of all, it was comforting. Today, we forget how satisfying a single baked apple can be. No need for a dozen ingredients. No crust. No complications. Just a simple, slow-baked reminder of how sweet mornings used to be. So go ahead, pick an apple, slice it in half, and let your kitchen fill with the smell of cinnamon and home. Because sometimes, the best breakfasts don't come in a box. They come from the oven, and from memory. In the days before microwaves and drive-through breakfasts, weekday mornings still had a rhythm, and it often began with something hot, filling, and made from scratch. Enter the forgotten gem of the 1950s, ham and egg breakfast muffin cups. This wasn't the muffin you're thinking of. No blueberries. No sugar. This was savory, hearty, and practical. Made with slices of ham pressed gently into muffin tins to form edible cups, then filled with an egg, sometimes whole, sometimes scrambled, and baked until just set. It was clever. It was economical. And it turned leftovers into something extraordinary. For busy housewives, this was a revelation. No frying pans. No flipping. You could prepare a dozen at once, and each one looked like a tiny celebration. Some women sprinkled grated cheese on top, sharp cheddar, Swiss, or even a spoonful of cottage cheese. Others added minced onion, bell pepper, or even a splash of cream for a richer texture. It was breakfast you could hold in your hand, pack into a lunch pail, or serve on a Sunday platter next to a mound of home fries and a pot of strong coffee. Kids loved them. Husbands asked for seconds. And for a generation trying to balance thriftiness with flavor, this little recipe delivered both. The ham crisped at the edges, holding everything together like a golden crust. The egg baked perfectly inside, soft but firm, never rubbery. And the whole thing popped out of the tin with a satisfying ease. Today, we scroll past recipes like these. Too retro. Too simple. But maybe that's the point. Because in one bite, you get protein, salt, warmth, and memory. A breakfast made not just to fill you up, but to take care of you. So next time the morning feels like a rush, try slowing it down the old-fashioned way. Line a pan with ham. Crack some eggs. And let breakfast rise again, one little cup at a time. Sometimes, the most unforgettable breakfasts don't come from a cookbook. They come from necessity. And in the 1950s, no breakfast said quick, filling, and full of love quite like the banana and peanut butter sandwich. This wasn't some trendy protein hack, it was born in the kitchens of working families, where money was tight but the mornings still deserved something sweet and sustaining. Just 3 ingredients, a slice or two of white bread, a ripe banana, and a generous spread of peanut butter. That's it. No grill. No oven. Just a knife, a plate, and a few minutes of quiet. For a lot of kids, this was the breakfast. The kind you'd eat with one hand while tying your shoes with the other. And yet, it stuck with you literally and emotionally. The creaminess of peanut butter. The sweetness of banana. The soft pull of bread. It was humble, but it held you together until lunchtime. Some moms would mash the banana into the peanut butter for a smoother bite. Others sliced it into rounds and pressed the bread gently closed, cutting it on the diagonal with practiced care. If you were lucky, you'd get a drizzle of honey. If it was summer, maybe a dusting of cinnamon. And for the rare treat? Toasted bread, crispy on the outside, gooey on the inside. It wasn't about presentation. It was about heart. In some homes, it was breakfast. In others, it was comfort food for sick days or long car rides. And for a whole generation, it became a symbol of just how far simple food could go. Today, it's overlooked. Too basic. Too kid stuff. But maybe that's what makes it worth rediscovering. Because sometimes, the best breakfasts don't require anything new. Just a soft banana, a spoonful of peanut butter, and the memory of a kitchen where love was spread between two slices of bread. Back before every town had a drive-through donut shop. There was something even better coming out of the home oven, baked donut muffins. In the 1950s, when families wanted that warm, cake-like sweetness of a donut without the mess or expensive deep frying, home cooks turned to this clever trick. These weren't ordinary muffins. They were soft, tender, and rolled in melted butter and cinnamon sugar while still warm, giving them the look and feel of an old-fashioned cake donut, without the fryer. It started with a simple batter: flour, sugar, baking powder, egg, and a splash of nutmeg for that unmistakable donut shop aroma. Poured into muffin tins, they baked up golden and fluffy, their tops doming just right. But the real magic came after the oven. Fresh out of the tin, each muffin was brushed or dipped in melted butter, then rolled in a bowl of cinnamon sugar until it clung to every warm edge. The result? A breakfast that tasted like a bakery treat but felt homemade in the best way possible. These donut muffins were a weekend favorite, easy enough for kids to help with, impressive enough for company. They often showed up on brunch tables, next to coffee pots and grapefruit halves, served on delicate plates with floral edges. Some versions added applesauce, some had jam in the center, and others got a pinch of clove or a grating of lemon zest. But no matter the twist, the joy was the same: that first bite, still warm, buttery, and sweet enough to make you close your eyes for a moment. Today, we chase convenience and forget these small morning luxuries. But one tray of these muffins can change that. Because breakfast shouldn't just feed us, it should remind us of comfort, care, and kitchens that smelled like cinnamon and love. So go ahead, preheat the oven, grease the tin, and bring back the magic of a morning muffin that pretended to be a donut and did it beautifully. In a 1950s kitchen, there was one smell that could pull everyone out of bed, no questions asked: the warm, buttery aroma of coffee cake squares. Now don't let the name fool you, there wasn't a drop of coffee in the batter. This cake was meant to be eaten with coffee, not made from it. A soft, tender crumb topped with a brown sugar, cinnamon streusel, sometimes with a drizzle of icing, sometimes not. It was the ultimate balance of sweet and spice, and it turned even the simplest morning into something special. You'd often find it cooling on the windowsill in a square glass Pyrex dish, just pulled from the oven, still steaming. The top layer crackled with that cinnamon sugar crunch, hiding a buttery base so soft you could practically cut it with a spoon. Mothers made it ahead of time, ready for early breakfasts, school mornings, or those quiet hours before chores began. One pan fed the whole family. Sometimes more. And if guests showed up unannounced? No problem. There were always a few squares of coffee cake on hand, served with a smile and a hot cup poured fresh from the percolator. Every recipe had its own personality. Some used sour cream to keep it moist. Others added chopped walnuts or pecans into the topping for a little crunch. A few housewives even swirled in applesauce or chocolate chips for a surprise layer hidden inside. It wasn't fancy, but that was the beauty. This cake was made for real life. For real mornings. For families who wanted something sweet without the fuss. Today, we scroll past recipes like these. But maybe it's time we stop chasing trends and bring back the comfort of a single, simple square of cinnamon-kissed cake. So preheat your oven. Grease that vintage glass pan. And rediscover the breakfast that didn't need frosting or fanfare, just a fork, a cup of coffee, and a little bit of quiet. Before muffins came oversized, sugar-glazed, and wrapped in plastic at gas stations, there were blueberry muffins. Real ones. Made at home, with care. In 1950s kitchens, blueberry muffins were more than just a quick breakfast, they were a celebration of something simple and seasonal. If you were lucky enough to have fresh berries, maybe picked that morning or bought from a roadside stand, you'd fold them into thick, golden batter with a wooden spoon, each stir guided more by feel than recipe. The muffins were spooned into paper liners, often in an old metal tin that had seen better days. A sprinkle of sugar on top was all it took to make them special. No frosting, no filling. Just a tender crumb, juicy berries, and that unmistakable smell that filled the kitchen the moment they began to bake. They rose beautifully, soft domes with purple-blue streaks where the berries burst. And when you tore one open, steam would rise, and the berries would stain your fingers as you pinched off the warmest bite. Some moms added lemon zest for brightness. Others used sour cream for a moist crumb. And if it was winter, frozen blueberries were just fine, folded in quickly to keep them from turning the whole batter purple. These muffins didn't try to impress. But they comforted. They made school mornings easier. They turned gray days a little sunnier. And they told a whole generation of kids, without words, that someone had woken up early just to make something sweet for them. Today, we see muffins as grab-and-go items. Wrapped. Mass-produced. Forgotten by the time the car hits the road. But one tray of homemade blueberry muffins can change that. Because some mornings call for something real. Something warm. Something that still remembers the taste of home, the scent of Saturday morning, and the love hidden in a handful of fresh-picked berries. Before boxed mixes and microwave breakfast sandwiches took over our mornings, American kitchens, especially in the South and Midwest, had a quiet hero waiting in the oven: cornbread muffins. Golden, hearty, and slightly sweet, these muffins were a breakfast staple in the 1950s. Not just for dinner, not just for chilly nights. Cornbread in the morning? Oh, absolutely. Served warm with a pat of butter melting into the crumb, or drizzled with a little honey or molasses if the mood called for it. They weren't fancy, but they didn't need to be. The ingredients were humble: cornmeal, flour, baking powder, a pinch of salt, milk, eggs, and just enough sugar to round it all out. Some used buttermilk for a little tang. Others added creamed corn for extra moisture, or a handful of shredded cheddar for a savory kick. Baked in well-used muffin tins, sometimes cast iron, sometimes dented aluminum, these little golden rounds were the definition of simple satisfaction. They came out warm, rustic, with slightly crisp edges and soft, crumbly centers. You didn't need a knife, just tear one open, steam rising, and swipe on a little homemade jam or apple butter. That was breakfast. In many homes, cornbread muffins were served alongside scrambled eggs or cold slices of leftover ham from the night before. In others, they were dipped into milk or crumbled into a bowl with warm syrup poured over top, a forgotten comfort that somehow made you feel cared for, even on the most ordinary mornings. Somehow, we've drifted from these kinds of breakfasts. Too slow. Too plain. But that's exactly why they matter. Because in a world of fast food and flavor overload, cornbread muffins remind us of the power of a quiet morning, the kind where you sit down, take a bite, and realize this is what breakfast was always meant to be. So pull out the cornmeal. Grease the tins. And let your kitchen smell like something warm, golden, and worth remembering. There was a time when breakfast didn't come wrapped in paper or crammed into a cup holder. It came toasted. It came warm. It came simple. And nothing captured that quiet elegance better than toasted English muffins with butter. In 1950s households, English muffins weren't some luxury item reserved for fancy brunches. They were a pantry staple, stacked in neat paper sleeves, stored on countertops next to the bread box. Their distinct shape, round and humble, made them feel just a little different, special, even. When split open, usually with a fork and not a knife, their insides revealed that trademark craggy texture, all those little nooks and crannies just waiting to catch the melting butter. Into the toaster they went, not for speed, but for perfection. A light golden brown, crisp on the surface, warm and soft inside. And once they popped, the ritual began. Real butter, never margarine, spread generously so that it sank deep into every crevice. Sometimes a spoonful of jam followed, or a drizzle of honey. But often, the butter alone was enough. Simple. Satisfying. Honest. For kids heading to school, it was a quick but nourishing bite. For moms up early with the sun, it was a pause before the day began. And for dads sipping hot black coffee at the table, it was a familiar companion to the morning paper. These weren't flashy. They weren't Instagrammable. But they didn't need to be. They were warm. Reliable. Familiar. And in those quiet early hours, they reminded a whole generation that comfort could come in the smallest things. Today, we overlook them. We rush. We reheat. We forget. But one toasted English muffin with butter melting into every golden groove can bring it all back. So slice one open. Toast it slow. And remember the kind of morning that didn't need anything fancy, just a warm plate, a quiet kitchen, and a breakfast that felt like home. Before breakfast sandwiches became oversized, overstuffed, and served through a drive-through window, there was something far more honest and comforting: the scrambled egg breakfast sandwich. This was the kind of meal made on busy mornings, but still made with love. In the 1950s, it didn't require a dozen ingredients or a special pan. Just 2 slices of toast, a softly scrambled egg, and maybe a slice of cheese or ham if there was some leftover from dinner. That's it. Simple, warm, and portable. The eggs were the star. Not rubbery or dry, but gently cooked in a bit of butter, stirred slowly in a cast iron skillet until they were soft and creamy. A little salt. A little pepper. Nothing fancy, just done right. The bread? Usually whatever was on hand: white sandwich slices, whole wheat, or if it was the weekend, maybe a fresh biscuit or English muffin. Once toasted, it was layered with care: egg, cheese, maybe a smear of mayo or a touch of mustard. Then wrapped in wax paper or slipped into a napkin for the road. It was a mother's way of saying you've got this without ever speaking a word. It was a father's quiet ritual before a long workday. And for kids, it was the handheld hug you got before school, eaten on the front steps or the back seat of the car. No one thought twice about it. But looking back, that sandwich was everything. It filled the belly. It calmed the nerves. And it started the day with a kind of homemade hope we rarely stop to appreciate. Today, breakfast sandwiches are fast food. But they used to be fast love. So toast your bread. Crack your eggs. And remember the mornings when breakfast didn't just feed you, it held you together. If these memories made your mouth water or tugged at your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because here, we're not just cooking, we're keeping history alive, one forgotten breakfast at a time.